Hello, everyone.
Welcome to Happiness Hunch. Our topic today is food is medicine. And we're going to talk about the importance of understanding that the body is a complex organism. Is that a right way to say it?
Yes, it's very complex. We have to have a nuanced look at the body and view of our bodies.
Yeah. And what makes our body so complex is that it's made up of all these systems which are interdependent on each other, and they're integrated with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to think of the analogy, it's like a spider's web, where if you pull on one part of the web, the whole web moves. And the body works very much the same way, that when you do something to one part of the body, it really does affect
kind of
the
like
whole
throwing
body.
a stone in the water, too, how it has a ripple. You know, it's not just where the stone lands, but there's this rippling impact, right, of the stone. So two good examples, yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at the way modern medicine deals with the human body, it tends to deal with the human body as in terms of its sort of aggregate parts, and it tends to isolate the parts from the whole body, or the ecology of the body, we could say, and tries to deal with each of those body parts or those systems kind of individually. So a good example would be, just look at the medical establishment. It's divided up into very highly specialized areas of medicine. It's not a bad thing. But if I have a heart issue and I go to a heart specialist, he's only going to look at primarily my heart. Might look at some of my diet and stuff, but isn't going to go down very deeply to look at what the underlying realities which might have given rise to my heart condition would be. Typically, they might say, well, it's just that you're eating certain kind of foods that are clogging your heart, or maybe they'll say you have a congenital heart problem. But actually, because of the complexity of the body, it's much more complicated than that. And the same would be said for, say, cancer. A lot of times they just look at cancer as a thing and then try to just treat the cancer and not looking at, well, what's the environment of the body that has given rise to the cancer?
Right, like so we know that there's this fermentation process involved in a lot of cancers, but we never beg the question, what's causing this fermentation to take place, and which is causing cancer cells to replicate, so, right.
Yeah. Secondly, modern medicine tends to focus on symptoms and not underlying causes, which kind of reiterates what we just said. Right. But also, it tends to treat problems with pharmaceuticals or drugs or surgical interventions. And usually through a kind of one-size-fits-all. So if a person has this condition, this is a standard protocol for dealing with it. Whereas sometimes people might manifest a problem, and you might have 5 people with what looks like to be the same problem, but there might be a different underlying cause to that, or a set of conditions which are created by the different aspects or systems within the body that are giving rise to the problem. Right. So that's typically the way modern medicine. So what happens when we have a problem and modern medicine deals with that problem, it doesn't necessarily restore our body to homeostasis. And in fact, sometimes it can actually throw our body even out of more balance, or out of balance even more, say that correctly, or knock us deeper out of homeostasis. So,
and the hope is probably, I don't even know if there is a hope, but one would hope that maybe would be just for a time, but some people are left, in that state, and then other complications come into play.
Yeah, and are dependent then on ongoing, medications that accumulate, because typically medications they'll address a symptom, but they'll create other symptoms. And then you have to have other medications to deal with those other symptoms while you're on this one medication to help this primary problem that you have. So, you see this, for example, especially as people get older, but like I think of things like, you have an underlying problem with, say, excessive cholesterol, heart clogging, so they put you on a statin drug, and then the statin drug itself creates other issues like muscle difficulties, for example. And so then a person might be more susceptible to falling down, and then they break their hip, and then it goes on, it kind of accumulates in this way.
Right.
So talk about homeostasis. What do we mean? What is homeostasis?
Well, so homeostasis is really when the body is in good balance. In other words, at the cellular level, our cells are functioning properly. Our blood looks good. It's balanced. It has the right amount of sodium. It has the right amount of fatty acids. Glucose is in the optimal level. So when you think of homeostasis, it's kind of like just thinking of your body as functioning optimally. So everything's working and it's in good working order.
Yeah, and a good indication of that is that if you are functioning well, you will find healing. Things will clear up. And when something does happen, like you get sick or you cut yourself, that heals quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And your body can repair itself well. Whereas when you're not in homeostasis, you tend to accumulate problems.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
you get infections, or you find different things. Your hair's falling out, or your eyesight is really suddenly going bad. That happened to me recently, where very quickly, all of a sudden, I was having a hard time with my eyes. Or
Lyme disease is another good one. A lot of people carry Lyme disease, and it doesn't express itself, but it does when your health starts declining. When you start getting down under, you're not in homeostasis. That's when you'll see a lot of the Lyme symptoms. So, people want to put Lyme in remission. Some people actually want to go deeper than that and really get rid of it altogether, which is quite a project. But I think Lyme disease is another really good example.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could go on endlessly with this, but the idea is when all of the major systems, from the largest all the way down to the very, very microscopic, when each part is working according to how it's designed to work and working in symmetry with the rest of the body, that's called homeostasis, and that's when we have vitality in life. So we tend to regenerate well.
Our hormones are balanced.
We grow properly if we're children. We heal quickly when things happen.
We get over illnesses rather, quickly and without a lot of issues. Right?
Yeah. So now, when it comes to trying to bring oneself back into homeostasis, okay, it's generally more difficult to deal or manage with particular things than it is with the whole body, actually. In other words, the principles of regeneration and restoration and healing are within the body, and there's a kind of intelligence to that. It knows what to do. Your body knows what to do. And so it can be overwhelming, because if you have problems, you might say, well, I'm going to try to deal with this part of it. And then all of a sudden there's another part of it, and you're like, oh, I'm going to deal with this part of it. And you might do that through a pharmaceutical drug, or you might do that with a supplement or whatever. And so this is why we have always kind of, as a first principle, not an exclusive principle, but as a first principle, always tried to use food as medicine.
Right. Because you can kill a lot of birds with one stone.
Right.
You can have weird things going on with cholesterol. You can have weird things going on with your endocrine system, your hormones. But see, if you focus on overall health, you'll tick off a whole lot of things. So instead of just focusing on one thing.
Right. So if you think about the body's designed to assimilate food. And the foods that we eat are designed to be assimilated. So there's a synergy there. There's really an ecology that exists not just within my body, but my body is part of a larger ecosystem that it's supposed to exist in harmony with. So if you think about this, the way God designed things, He designed things so that when we eat food, then our body can extract from that food and assimilate into the body what is in the food that the body needs for healing and regeneration and growth, etc. So it's easy. You don't have to focus. If you're really eating clean and really eating
whole foods,
and eating a nutrient-dense diet, and minimizing the stressors on your body, which can come from lack of sleep, lack of exercise, excessive amount of stress, etc., then your body will know what to do as long as we're giving it the right food.
Mm-hmm.
So
and that means not excessive
itself.
Carbohydrates too.
Right.
Excessive carbohydrates are a stressor on the body.
Right.
Yeah.
So food, we could say, is a simple solution to a complex problem. Now, one of the things I like to talk about is sort of the relationship or the difference between art and technology. So when we think about an art, in a way what we're doing is we're trying to imitate nature through art. And we're trying to work with the principles of nature. Okay, so and there's different kinds of arts. So obviously if you're a dancer, you're trying to move with the principle of physics, but you're trying to produce beauty in the process of doing that. Or if you're an artist and you're painting, you're going to work with the natural principles of color and texture and things like that. So if you think of medicine as an art, what good medicine does is try to work with the natural principles of the body, mm-hmm. and try to help to support those natural principles and processes, not contravene them or interfere with them or disrupt them or shut them down. Mm-hmm. So for a good mm-hmm. example, like a lot of times people have tonsillitis a lot as a child, a modern, a truly artistically medical way of dealing with that is to work with the body to try to figure out how to heal the underlying problem which is causing tonsillitis. Yeah. What modern medicine will do is say, well, just cut them out.
Yeah, we'll just take it out.
But like we'll say, well, why does the body have tonsils? Like God created us with tonsils. So obviously there's a purpose and a function. We can get along without it. But that's a very extreme measure to take, is just to cut them out.
When really what you have is an inflammatory response in your tonsils. And we never ask the questions, well, why are we having this inflammatory response?
Yeah.
So, and I was one of those sort of guinea pigs. I don't have tonsils, because I had inflamed tonsils. I had tonsillitis. So, but the answer isn't taking it out. The answer is looking a little deeper.
Right. So if we compare this to technology, obviously we use technology mm-hmm. in medicine.
Right.
And that's good.
Right.
But what we've done in modern times is we have used our technology as ways of substituting for the principles of mm-hmm. nature. Mm-hmm. So as surrogates, I call it, as a surrogate. So we kind of remove or disable the natural function, or we replace it and substitute it. And then your body's own system isn't operating, which of course is going to throw the whole mm-hmm. system out. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're not against technology and the use of modern science and research, but it's how it's used. It needs to be used in a way that is in accordance with and supports the natural principles and systems mm-hmm. of life, vitality, healing, growth, etc. in the body.
And those natural principles really should be a top priority. The top priority first.
Right. And then because of the state of things today, we're not always able, even with the best diet, to fully recover mm-hmm. from the conditions that we have. So we turn to supplements. Yeah. Okay? Now, the way we typically deal with supplements is we say, okay, the first priority is food. The second priority are whole food supplements.
Right.
So
as close as we can stay to nature.
Yeah. So whole salt, cod liver oil, nutritional yeast, for example, gives us mm-hmm. a lot of B vitamins. Those are example of whole food supplements.
Right.
So when we have an underlying condition, okay, we will lean into those more in addition to the good food we're trying to eat. Mm-hmm. Then, if that isn't working and we still have issues, what we'll find is that we'll get some healing mm-hmm. and some improvement, but not as much as we want. So then we'll supplement with actual vitamin and mineral supplements, which are they're processed. They're distilled and concentrated down into pill mm-hmm. form. So you think of like vitamin C, D.
Yeah. Trying to get 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C in one capsule.
Yeah.
That's a process.
Yeah.
But we'll do that.
Yeah.
When we need to.
So, for example, like I have an issue, my muscles will cramp, and I think it's related to a sugar issue that I've had my whole life. So So I will use I'll take supplements of magnesium and potassium, which helps. When I go off of those, I have more problems with cramping muscles. When I take it, obviously it subsides. Not all the way, because I think the underlying issue is still being addressed. Okay, but hopefully over time I'm experiencing greater and greater healing. So now there's natural vitamins and mineral supplements, but then there's also synthetic ones. Now, again, by virtue of degree, a more natural vitamin and mineral supplement is going to be assimilated into the body more like food is assimilated into the body. But when you start using a synthetic vitamin,
it's a little less.
You start realizing that your body doesn't quite know what to do with that. And the reason for that is because nutrients and vitamins, when they appear in nature, they appear in the context of food. So they are embedded within something, and the body knows how to break that thing down and pull what it needs out of that. Right. When it receives a synthetic version of that in a highly concentrated form, a lot of that just goes out and down the toilet. So you spend a lot of money and absorb very little. So it's a very highly concentrated supplement that's very inefficient in terms of getting into your system. Right?
Yeah. So food would be the most, efficient way to take care of your body, for sure. Because when you start using synthetics, then you're dealing with, your enzymic atmosphere in the body, isn't going to know exactly how to use those raw materials, that raw material that you're putting in that's more synthetic. So it is just more challenging for those things to be effective. And yet we go there when we need to, but we also recognize that what our bodies recognize the best is food. Then food supplements, then we get into other categories, like we'll take ascorbic acid, that is a more of a processed version of vitamin C, but a lot of times we layer into that, acerola berries, and, there's other high nutrient dense vitamin C components that will be in with that also. So it's there are complements oftentimes too that help. So.
Right. Yeah, and for me, like with the potassium, I try to get as much potassium in food, like eggs, for example, as I can. But my body seems to need more of that. So I take it. I can't eat enough food to get, it seems, the amount of potassium that I need. And that's because my system is not working perfectly in some way because of years and years of
and also
damage.
Our soils are very depleted because of modern agricultural practices, where a lot of the minerals are stripped out and they're never put back in again. So we have that issue too. It's very hard to get everything we need, from what we grow. So it's a real challenge. So supplements become more helpful, with that in mind.
Yeah. And then the final thing is just drugs or pharmaceuticals. And the thing is pharmaceuticals are always trying to treat one condition, right? And it's very specific and narrowly focused in terms of the treatment and the effect. But there's a lot of side effects that come with that. Yeah. And so that's why when you watch drug ads, they'll list a million things that can go wrong even while this thing is addressing this one thing. Yeah. So that should be a red flag. Now, we wouldn't say never take a drug. There are times in which, because of extreme circumstances, you need to get through a crisis or get through a very serious moment. Like my mother almost died. She had a very, very serious bacterial infection, and she almost died, and they gave her a new experimental antibiotic, and it saved her life. But she was literally within hours of dying, at that point. So there's a time and a place for those kinds of extreme interventions. Yeah. But when we see taking pharmaceuticals as a way of life, as a lifestyle...
This is where we go first.
Yes. And then what we're doing is we're actually creating more problems in our system, and we're not dealing with the underlying system, and we're not bringing about regeneration and healing in the body.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know about you, but when I listen to some of these commercials, I'm like, holy cow, this thing would scare the living daylights out of me. It makes me want to eat better because I don't want to really be forced with the decision to have to choose one of those, because some of the side effects are worse than the thing itself. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
that's why we say food is medicine.
Yeah.
And our first option should always be to eat the healthiest, which is often the most expensive, food that we can afford,
mm-hmm.
so that we're supporting our natural systems and really practicing the art of healing,
Mm-hmm.
right? By using natural things
Mm-hmm.
that will help the body utilize its natural systems and its natural processes for
good health.
For good health and regeneration.
Right.
All right. So that's our video for today. We'll leave some notes down for you down below, and be sure to like this video. And next week we're going to continue with our series, our Get Well series, and probably do a few more videos on the health of the body. So, all right. Until next time, take care, everyone.
All right. Take care. Bye.
See ya.